Hello.
Hello, everybody. Greetings from Pathkind and Heartcare Foundation of India. I'm Dr. K.T. Agarwal. And you are watching with us a series of seminars with an expert from Pathkind. Everything is related to diagnostics and diagnosis of COVID-19. I have with me Professor Ashok Ratan, a Commonwealth Fellow. He is also a INSA DFG Fellow, CRO Temporary Advisor. He is also the WHO Lab Director of CARAC and PAHO. And he is the advisor and mentor at Center of Excellence Microbiology and leads Knowledge Forum at Pathkind Labs R&D and Quality. And he is formerly of the faculty at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, a person who is an expert. I can say that in education about diagnostic, genomics, and viral, there is no match to him. Let's listen to him on an important subject. With this, we will go slightly more deeper into genomics. We will be slow today because subject is slightly more difficult, more technical. But if you have listened to us in the past, you should be able to get more picture about it. Why cases are occurring in spite of herd immunity in Brazil? Why are we getting mutations? We have some mutations which are deletion, some are substitution mutations, some in RBD, some in RBM. Will the 440 mutation in Maharashtra of concern? Will the 448 mutation in Maharashtra become a mutation of concern? Or will we have only the deletions mutations which will predominate the country? Let's listen to him and then we will interact. Over to you, Professor Ratan.
Thank you, sir. So today we will talk about tackling a moving target in the light that there's resurgence of COVID-19 in Brazil despite high prevalence, zero prevalence. Now, we have seen this a number of times. SARS-CoV-2 has a spike protein which is made out of two genets, S1 and S2. And when you compare this with SARS-CoV-1, you find that there were similarities, but there were very much dissimilarities. The one which are not in red are the dissimilarities. So that SARS-CoV-2...
You need to show the slides.
So slides are showing or no?
No.
1 minute, sir. Now, sir?
Yes. Go back from the first one.
So we would talk about how to tackle a moving target. And we're starting off with COVID. The major enemy is the virus, but the virus enters us through the spike protein. So spike protein you should consider more like a key to us, to our cells. So, and it consists of two portions. It consists of S1 and S2 unit. When we compare how it was different from SARS-CoV-1, you find that there are similarities, but only about 70%, 30% this is different, but both SARS-CoV-1 and CoV-2 bind to ACE2 receptors. Now, looking at SARS, the spike protein in detail, as I said, there is S1 and S2, and S3 is made out of protomers. There are three protomers. These protomers normally are in a closed situation, but when they are in open situation, they bind very well, more evidently with the ACE2 receptors. And the whole genome is 30,000 base pair, and the spike protein is made out of 1,273 amino acids. This has been explained in greater detail in the past, and everybody knows that is the spike protein that binds to the ACE2 receptors, and an enzyme known as TMPRSS2 then dissolves the membrane and allows the genome to enter into the cell and take over control of human cell. This is how the virus enters into us and cause infection. That this was very vital was explained long time back at the beginning of the infections, when they created an animal model in Syrian hamsters, and when they transferred antibodies to new hamsters, they could prevent infection. So we knew that antibodies to spike would give us protection. And that is the fundamental principle on which nearly all the vaccines which have been made available are based, that they are leading to antibodies against spike protein. You would also recall that President of US, when he suffered from infection, he was given monoclonal antibodies. This was during that time, they had also marked out that if you produce monoclonal antibodies and then you react to the spike protein, you can neutralize them by the N terminal domain as well as binding to the R receptor binding domain. Receptor binding domain had 9 places where the monoclonal antibody will bind and cause neutralization, while the N-terminal domain, the N is the amino acid terminal in the front portion. There would be about 8 sites which could be which the monoclonal antibodies will bind and will cause neutralization. And at the top of the spike, there were 2 sites which would also help in neutralization. So the end point was that there were about 18 to 19 sites on the spike protein, which would lead to union of that with the antibodies will lead to neutralization. As I said in the beginning, that the spike protein is made out of 3 protomers, and these protomers can be in the closed situation or in the open situation. As another virologist had explained, you should think of this as a flower, that the flower is either closed or it is open. Now, it's also been seen by modeling that when the spike protomers are in closed situation, then the binding will occur, but not very evidently. On the other hand, when they are in the open situation, the binding is better. Now, the complaint against coronavirus is that it mutates very frequently. That is a property of an RNA virus. Every RNA virus has a property of mutating. But to put this in the consideration, it is there that SARS-CoV-2 picks up 1 mutation every month. On the other hand, influenza, which is also an RNA virus, would have picked up 2 mutations per month. On the other hand, HIV, which is also an RNA virus, would have picked up 4 mutations. So SARS rate of collecting mutation is half of that of influenza and 1/4 that of HIV. This is partly because in the genome of the RNA of SARS-CoV-2, there's an enzyme known as XON, which has proofreading ability. Of course, it is not as efficient as normally proofreading enzymes are, but if you inactivate this enzyme, then the mutation will increase to 15-fold or 24. Now, mutations can occur in any part of the 30,000 base pair of the virus, and many of them are silent mutations or non-consequential mutations. The real mutations that you're worried about is that which occur in the spike protein. And as I indicated, that the virus has inherent ability to do proofreading and correct some of the mistakes that might occur during multiplication. But one mutation which occurred somewhere in March in the spike protein was the D614G, where aspartate got converted into glycine. And what this did was this, from a closed protomer, it became an open protomer. And as I tried to explain, when there's a mutation in the spike protein and from closed situation, it becomes an open protomer, then the affinity increases. And this was then noticed that if all the protomers were closed, then D will be predominant. But if at least one or two are open, then G will be the one which will be more. So whenever there is that mutation had occurred, it gave an advantage to the spike protein, which has glycine rather than aspartate. So which had 614G rather than D. And soon it occurred in February, but by March, it started increasing. And now nearly all the isolates that you get have D614G mutation. So it had, because it had opened up the spike protein protomers, it had more affinity and it increased fitness to survive. But it did not cause more severity, or at that time, of course, antibodies were not ready, but this mutation was not at the RBD junction, but in the spike protein. As this virus has ability to proofread, one of the mechanism which the virus has of escaping immune response is by deletion. So one was proofreading, and the proofreading, one was mutation in the spike protein, but another mechanism that it used was to have deletion, so that the site to which the antibodies will bind would be lost. And as you see here, that in SARS-CoV-2, deletion is very common, and this will then lead to removing the sites on which the antibodies will bind. As you see here, the mutations were more located in N-terminal domain rather than in receptor binding domain. And they were of various lengths. But as Dr. Agarwal indicated, the 6970 deletion is a predominant deletion that has occurred. Now, the deletion of 69 and 70 amino acid led to conformational changes of the spike protein. And the moment from closed it became open, it had twofold increase in infectivity. It improves SARS-CoV-2 fitness. And of course, in diagnostics, those of us who were using the TACPath kit, and TACPath kit at one time was the commonest kit used because it detected 3 specific genes of the virus in one tube. Since the mutation was at the site where the primers for the S gene would bind, there would be dropout or silencing of the S gene. But it did not lead to any compromise of the results because the test was also detecting N gene and ORF1AB gene, and any 2 of the 3 genes, if they were detected, then a person could report the test as positive. Unfortunately, we were initially using these kits, but since the cost of the kit was high and the cost of the test became tremendously low, we had to shift to simpler kits. Other deletions which have occurred are in amino acid 144 and deletion of 242 to 244. I'm sorry, I'm making that as 242 and 242. Is 242 and 244. But ultimately, it was changes in the receptor binding domain, which extends from amino acid 319 to 541, which are likely to have the most significant effect, as this is the region of receptor binding domain which binds to the ACE2 receptors. 3 distinct versions of the virus have independently converged on some of the same mutations, even if the patients are thousands of miles apart. One is in UK, which had the first virus of concern. The second one was in South Africa, and now in South America or Brazil, and recently in California, similar kind of observations have been made. If you look at the nucleotide, the spike protein, as I said, extends from 21,563 to 25,384 base pair, which accounts for 1,273 amino acids, and thousands of variants were identified. But many of these variants are of no significance because they were not at the receptor binding site. But there have been 3 variants of concern. Variants of concern, the first one was the UK variant of concern, which had an N501 to Y change. N is asparagine and it becomes tyrosine. Then there was this South Africa change, which besides 501 also had accumulated 2 more mutations, E484Y and K417N. 2 of these, 501 and 484, are in a region of the receptor binding domain which binds to the ACE2 receptors, and that region is known as receptor binding motif. On the other hand, 417 binds to the stem of the receptor binding domain. The first one, 501, increases transmissibility, and the second one, 484, have been associated with increase in immune escape, so that it doesn't bind to the antibodies. From India, E484Q and N440K have also been reported, but their significance is not cleared yet. Now, when you look at the, if you compare the South African with the UK strain, and then you find that in between there was a Denmark variant, which had come from the minks. Mink farming is very common in Denmark, and it appeared that the SARS-CoV-2 had jumped from minks to man and then back to mink again. And they had different mutations there, and it was decided to cull all the minks. Maybe an overreaction, but as a consequence, that strain has become extinct. While the UK strain, which appeared in September, is now the dominant one, and it has one mutation, which it has about 14 mutations, but the N501Y was the most prominent, and along with that is the deletion of 6970. When it reached South Africa, it picked up E484K, and that has led to immune escape, because now E, which is glutamate, has become lysine, has been substituted by lysine. So a negatively charged base has been substituted by a positively charged base. And as a consequence, it's been able to avoid attachment with, to a certain extent, with the antibodies which people have raised against the spike protein. The N501Y mutation is in the receptor binding domain, and you would expect that once the receptor binding domain opens up, then it will be able to bind to ACE2 receptor better. Same was the case with E484K, where again the mutation is in the receptor binding domain and the receptor binding motif, and the configuration of the spike protein changes so that it binds better not only to the ACE2 receptors, but now it has less affinity for antibodies. Subsequently, another lineage, which is known as B1351, which is the South African one, and P1 lineage, which is the Brazil lineage, has picked up multiple mutations, and these are the three which are causing concern. If you look at the mutations, then the first one was D614G, where, as you notice here, GAU got converted into GGU. GAU would be aspartate, and GGU codes for glycine. So it's a different amino acid, and therefore the configuration changes. The second change was N501Y, where asparagine changed to tyrosine, and asparagine here, it will be AAU, and AAC could become UAU and UAC, so that adenine has now changed to uracil, and from asparagine it becomes tyrosine. The third mutation, and these two mutations are there, and they give advantage to the virus, So they are there in all the lineage that have survived. E484K, where glutamate gets converted into lysine. Here it is GAA, guanine getting converted into adenine, and GAA or GAG becomes AAA or AAG. So a guanine getting converted into adenine, and as you know, adenine is a purine, while guanine is also purine. Now, the two changes which have been noticed in India are E484Q, where glutamate becomes glutamine, and N440K, where again N is asparagine, and it will become lysine. So here, as you notice, that uh, instead of guanine gets changed to cytosine in case of E484Q, and in case of N440K, it is uracil which gets converted into adenine. Now, the last one is in the RBD, but not in the motive, which is K417T, where lysine is getting converted into threonine. This is normally the chart which is used because every amino acid is coated by three base pair. Three bases will combine to code for one amino acid, and there are 20 amino acids that we need to account for. And these are the nucleotides which will change, the pyrimidine and purine. Now, basically, you'll notice that if you compare all the new variants of interest, whether it is B117, which is the UK strain, or B1351, which is the South African strain, or the Brazil, which was actually initially isolated in Japan, in the airport in Japan, where people came from Brazil and they were isolated there, you would notice that D614G is present in all of them. In the three strains of interest, 501 is also present. Along with that, there is E484K in both the South African and the Brazil strain, and there's also K417T, which is present in both South Africa and Brazil. Along with that, there is the deletion that also plays its role, and they are all getting more and more advantage to the virus, and that is why they are being retained. Now, the next question, which is of our interest, is that, okay, the virus has got these mutations. What happens to the antibodies which are supposed to bind to the spike protein to prevent its union with ACE2 receptors? Pfizer has issued this correspondence in which they said that they checked with the UK strain as well as the South African, and you will notice that in PRNT, that is where the neutralizing antibodies are detected, there was not much difference in between the Wuhan strain, the original one, and the isolate from UK or Brazil. On the other hand, when you look at B1351, then you'll notice that 351, which is again in both in South Africa as well as the P1 in Brazil, there is some loss of titer. at least 1/4 to 1/6 loss of titer is there. Though they claimed that the vaccine provides protection, but yes, in the Brazil strain, there is loss of titer. Same was the finding with Moderna. Moderna also put up that that when they looked at reciprocal titers, there was no change. But when they looked at the 351, the neutralization of 351, then there is a decrease in titer. In this, then you think that maybe Covaxin, which is instead of focus, all the other vaccines have focused on the spike protein. And we know now that the spike protein mutates quite frequently. But Covaxin, which is a whole cell killed vaccine, which provides many antigens, will not only benefit from offering cell-mediated immunity, but also antibodies to others to neutralize. And as I tried to indicate, that it's not only the receptor binding domain which is active, but neutralization is possible by other sites also. And here they have indicated that in using human serum from vaccinated persons, Covaxin is active against the mutant strains. And it produces not only antibodies, but also T cells. And there's a paper in in Nature which says that killer T cells may be important for new variants. And they also question whether mixing COVID vaccines will increase the immune response, since it will provide a variety of antigens for the immune system to respond. Another paper in Cell Report Medicine indicates that T cells play a very important role in immunoprevalence and protection against SARS-CoV-2. And they suggest that T cell response recognizes at least 30 to 40 episodes in each donor. And immune dominance is correlated with HLA binding, and that both T cell response is important. Both CD4, which is the helper T cells, and the CD8, the suppressor T cells, are activated in case of recovery from COVID infection. Finally, I wanted to bring your attention to a paper, actually two papers, based on the same data. This is from Israel, where they analyzed 500,000. So 500,000 doses have been given, 500,000 persons have been vaccinated. And Gabriel, who's based in Israel, first published his paper, which is in preprint. And looking at the data that Gabriel provided, Hunter from Norwich Medical School in UK reviewed and has published another paper. Both the papers are in preprint, and I would urge you to read this because it's very interesting reading. Gabriel says implication of all available evidence is that the study result indicate that in real life, the first dose of the new Pfizer vaccine confers around 50% protection against overall SARS-CoV-2 infection, including symptomatic or asymptomatic. Together, our finding and the 95% efficacy shown in phase 3 trial suggests that Pfizer's vaccine should be administered in 2 doses to achieve maximum protection and impact in terms of disease burden reduction and possibly inducing SARS-CoV-2 transmission, reducing SARS-CoV-2 transmission. COVID-19 vaccine should be urgently deployed globally. This is the conclusion of Gabriel, looking at results of 500,000 patients, persons who were vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine. Now, looking at their paper, which is available in preprint, Hunter from Norwich put out this paper and says that our analysis would suggest that the effectiveness of Pfizer vaccine, at least in this Israel cohort, increased gradually day by day from about day 14 till reaching a peak of around 90% effectiveness on day 21, even before any second injection. And they conclude that it actually provides strong evidence that a single dose of the Pfizer vaccine can provide strong protection from 21 days after the initial injection. As such, the data from this Israel paper provides strong support for UK's policy of delaying the second dose of all vaccines. Now, when you look at Gabriel's paper, he says that it is retrospective cohort study using data from 2.6 million member state mandated healthcare providers in Israel. All were over 16 years of age who were vaccinated with Pfizer vaccine between December 19, 2020 and January 15, 2021. Positive RT-PCR from days after first dose to January 17, 2021 was recorded. Daily and cumulative infection rate in 1 to 12 days and 13 to 24 days were reported. So there were 503,875 individuals, mean age of 59.7%. 351,897 had 13 to 24 days follow-up. Between day 1 to 12, they had 2,484 RT-PCR positive persons after vaccination, and between 13 and 24, they had 614 RT-PCR positive. So they concluded that there was 51% reduction in RT-PCR confirmed cases 13 to 24 days after the first dose, and they recommended 2 doses for maximum protection. Looking at the same data, Hunter said that they have reviewed 500,000 vaccinated patients. They estimated that 3,077 new infections, which are RT-PCR confirmed, occurred in these 500,000 cases. When they extracted data for 24 days post first dose, their objective was to justify UK decision to delay second dose by 12 weeks so more persons could be vaccinated in UK with available stock of vaccine. They said that between 0 to 8 days, and that is in the graph, the incidence of RT-PCR increased twofold in those who were vaccinated. So it increased twice that of those who were not vaccinated. Between 0 and 14 days, there was no change. But after 21 days, when they looked at 0 to 21 days and beyond that, then there was 91% decrease of positivity in those who were vaccinated with 1 dose. The first one, 0 to 8, they tried to indicate that this is because of behavioral change in the healthcare workers who got, after vaccination, they removed their their masks and started gathering together and partying. As a consequence, in the first 8 days after the first dose, more infections occurred in those who were vaccinated than those who did not, as controls. But after 21 days, the prevalence or incidence of new infections in those vaccinated by one dose decreased by 91%. And as they looked at from, as I said, this is the same graph again, that they noticed that from 14 days onwards, the protection percentage efficacy of vaccine kept on increasing and went up to 91% for 21 days or 24 days. Overall, it indicates that the vaccine is highly effective. It will prevent severe illness, it will prevent hospitalization, and it will prevent new cases. And according to the Israel government, after the second dose, 7 days after the second dose, the number of cases have drastically decreased, and after 14 days of the second dose, you will rarely find a positive case in those who have been vaccinated. Finally, we come to answering the question that in Brazil, where there was high prevalence, why there has been a resurgence. Now, in Brazil, there was a big outbreak in March 2020, and a sero survey in June indicated that just like Delhi, 52% of people were seropositive. This increased to 76% seroprevalence being positive in Brazil. That exceeded the herd immunity of 67%, even if we take the R naught as 3. And so people started relaxing. But in December, if there were 552 RT-PCR positive, they jumped suddenly, as they have jumped in Mumbai, to 3,421. In the paper, they have indicated there could be 4 explanations. One could be that the first one was there were overestimation in sero survey, and it was not 52% and 76% of the population, because it's only a sample sero survey that is taken. So that estimation of 76% being positive, seropositive, may be an overestimation. The second explanation they try to give is that since the outbreak occurred in March, and we have evidence that reinfection does not occur for at least 6 months, and since more than 6 months had passed since March, in January, when new infections occur, maybe the immunity had waned. The third explanation is that there are new mutants, and these mutants, B117 was circulating, B135 is circulating, and other mutants like P1 and P2, they might be the reason why there has been an increase, a spurt in new cases. And the fourth reason they say is that maybe the lineage with high transmissibility, which contains N501 mutation, E484K mutation, and K417T mutation may be present, which is the fact. As a consequence, more numbers have increased. Of course, in this bleak scenario, we now know that Novavax COVID vaccine protects patients against variants. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is also getting authorization, and it has shown good activity against the variant. And Moderna is taking a new variant specific COVID-19 vaccine into phase 1 trials. This has all the 3 mutations that are just listed. So they're going into as a booster dose. Moderna has decided to get this done. So what is it that we should be doing? One, we should continue our sero survey so that we have a better check on how many persons have already been infected. Those of us who have been vaccinated should check development of protective antibodies 14 days after the second dose. And we should not delay second dose if titer after the first dose done on 28 days is low. We should do genotyping of the viruses, which the government of India is doing, so that the new mutants can be identified. And whenever we should whenever there's reinfection, we should monitor them closely. We should continue implementation of non-pharmacological measures like masking when in public, social distancing, no congregation indoors, no school opening, no college opening, hand washing and respiratory etiquette must continue as before. We should determine efficacy of vaccine to neutralize the new mutants which we isolate. And since sera is present and the isolate is available, it is then NIV which must do this and inform, and they should rapid data sharing must become norm rather than people looking out for information. We should achieve and maintain low numbers with a clear preventive strategy. We should monitor spread of virus and individual variants, stop the virus at borders and protect the vulnerable, increase efficacy and pace of existing vaccination, and scientists should make a booster dose with these 3 mutants. And as I indicated, Moderna yesterday indicated that they are starting phase 1. So finally, I would like to say, to tackle a moving target, we must be flexible and evidence-based, or we will get resurgence of COVID-19 in Mumbai and Delhi despite high prevalence.
Thank you, Dr. Ratan, for exhaustive discussion on a subject made very simple. So we will have some discussions. We still have some time. Maybe we'll extend by another 5 minutes if the discussion goes on. So my thing is that Covaxin has shown a better response to neutralization. That's because it is also containing antibodies to non-S component, because it is also having antibodies to non-spike, that means all non-structural proteins, E, M, everything. So therefore, those types of antibodies may also be forming and neutralizing some part of newer mutations. So do you think that in India, that Covaxin can immediately come out with a second dose of all the killed vaccines? All the strains can be killed and converted into a, it's like Pneumo 23, you have so many strains into a single vaccine. So it will be easier, it's in India. Why should Covaxin give the same vaccine? First dose should be given the initial, and then they can have a, or will that also require phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials?
I think mixing, people have already tried in UK, they are doing the mixed trials. That means the first dose with Pfizer and the second dose with Sputnik or with Oxford. The aim, of course, in that it is messenger RNA. While Covaxin, the advantage of Covaxin is that it will also stimulate cell-mediated immunity against a whole host of antigens. While up till now, everybody else has been focusing on spike protein, which is important. And even now, as you see, whenever they are looking at neutralization, they are looking at neutralizing the spike protein. But we know, though we don't have too much evidence, that it is cell-mediated immunity and T lymphocytes which will also play a role, and Covaxin has offered to both. So, but maybe ideally it will be if a booster is provided, which could be used in the nose, because then it will provide IgA antibodies too.
What I am asking is, once the vaccine is available in the private sector, okay, protocols will vary.
Yes, sir.
Protocols will vary. And then it will be a mutual decision between the patient and the doctor. It will be no more a protocol. There
Yes, sir.
will be some people, they say, for example, if somebody today has a reaction with Covishield, he may be given Covaxin as a second dose. The government will say no. The current protocol says second vaccine will not be given. So they can easily be given Covaxin. Because we are talking about the logic. We are talking about the logic. And the logic, it shouldn't harm.
So the scientific is that once you have the vaccines available, then it is for the doctor and the patient to decide what they will do.
Therefore, I'm saying is, suppose you get two vaccines and no antibodies are found, you may go to the third vaccine of a different type.
Yes, it will make sense to, rather than to continue with.
For example, I took Covishield, and with my first dose, 3 consecutive antibodies were negative, including the day I took the second dose.
So the best is 14 days after the second dose.
No,
so
what I'm trying to say is, at that option, at that time, when after my first dose, even after 28 days, I did not have a single antibody. If Pfizer or Moderna was available, I would have gone for that on my own independent decision. I'm only trying to say is that the case-to-case basis, literature will come, because apart from evidence, you also have to see the logic. What I am trying at this moment is that Covaxin company should make another vaccine which has a dead virus of all the 3 strains together. For them, making it is easier. I'm only asking is that if they unite 3 strains together, don't they have to go through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials again?
So normally they have to demonstrate equivalence, or they have to show that the pathogenicity is not increased, or the toxicity is not increased whenever a new combination is made. But as it is, if you take a Covaxin after 1 dose or 2 doses of Covishield, and if antibodies are not formed, then it is possible that a better response might come. But at the moment, data from Covaxin antibody data is not available. I have not seen many persons. I did inquire from some, and they said that the trial is not yet over, so they are not finished unblinding. So they do not know.
No, you mean to even now they are blinding?
So, there was a case of one of our colleagues' wife. She had given us the sample where the titers came as 80. So I didn't know how to interpret that.
No. I'm only trying to say, do you think that, are you saying that even now they are blinding? Half vaccine and half not vaccine? It's not in the public domain.
They have not finished unblinding, or she has not been informed whether she had a placebo or an active, because I did write to persons saying that
I'm saying is, even today people are giving placebo.
No, sir. What happened is she has finished 2 doses, and then she won't.
No. I'm only asking is, as on today, when you say Covaxin vaccination is still under trial, Are they giving everybody a Covaxin, or half of the people are getting placebo? That's my question.
So I would not have first-hand information. The only one I know is that this lady who had finished
Because
her
if they are
vaccination.
giving half of the people, if they are giving placebo, I think because public is not aware, even we are not aware.
No, I'm not aware myself, sir.
Okay.
This was, of
So
course, when the I think the trial is already over, but the data is not available of the
the
trial.
second question is that nobody was talking about these mutations before the vaccine. Mutations, so many mutations occurred. Nobody was talking this mutation when the diagnostics came. See, so many diagnostics came, so many mutations have occurred, but there was
Yes.
no talk about in the social media about the mutations. And now every day you are talking about a mutation. Every mutation is now becoming important. Somewhere it is a vaccine war.
So I do feel that
Somewhere, because now every company, see, Covaxin coming, I'm better. Okay, so Covaxin has come back and says my antibodies are better. It is indirectly, it's a vaccine war. Now the Nova Shield coming, I am better. Then Johnson and Johnson coming, I am better. I think the whole thing may be a flare up. Flare up. Now let me go back to basics. Has anybody in the world died of reinfection till today?
not that I know of, sir.
No. So that means nobody has died. Okay. Has anybody died of a post-vaccine COVID?
No, sir.
Then how does it matter which vaccine it is? How does it matter which strain it is? As long as I'm not going to die. Everybody is talking about reinfection rate after the vaccine. Okay. How does it matter? As long as it is protecting my death. If not even a single person has died of a reinfection, and if there has not been a single death after vaccine dying of COVID, dying of blood pressure, thrombosis is a separate issue. But somebody developing pulmonary COVID and dying, I'm coming back. I have not heard about that. So therefore,
Yes,
all vaccines as on today will
are
provide
effective.
you some mutations. And then why so much media everywhere? Now, this New York paper, not yet peer reviewed, not yet published. Everybody is going to media that I have a new virus, I have a new virus, I have a new virus. In India, we have 7,000 mutations so far. So what? Now, this 484, 448 mutation, 440 and 448 has been noticed in India for so long. Now, let me come back to a basic thing. And the basic thing is that I will now talk about two types of mutations, substitution and deletion. Okay. Now, substitution can be recorrected by the proofreading mechanism,
Right.
but deletion cannot be. Once it is deleted, the proofreading mechanism has nothing to do. He cannot replace it. So once it is gone, it is gone. Okay. So therefore, deletion mutations are more important than the substitution mutations.
Yes, sir.
Therefore, we are seeing that UK strain is not going from the world. South African strain is at its decline. And Brazil strain has not spread the way UK strain has spread. I'm talking about the number of countries and the concern.
Mhm.
Maybe it is the deletion. So if a UK, unless the UK strain acquires a mutation of South Africa, that means 484, or Brazil, both of them will die out. If that's so, in India, the spurts which are coming, which are either 484 or 440, they are not associated with any deletion as of now, as informed in the public domain. I don't think so. India's second wave will go like this. The second wave of India cannot be bigger than the first wave. And the second wave of India cannot be broader than the first wave. It will be a smaller second wave which will come and fizzle out. What do you think? So at this moment, we are at the start of a second wave.
So I do feel that the vaccines are protective, and but of course only one crore or 2 crores have been vaccinated out of 125 crores. So the waves can have many meanings, but we should get a vaccination done. Whoever is offered a vaccine should get the vaccination done. And hopefully, if the vulnerable persons are vaccinated, then for younger persons and healthier persons, it may be a mild discomfort only. It's life-threatening for those who have comorbidities and who are elderly. So
No, actually, as on now, I'm only talking about the surge coming in Bombay and other places where the surge is coming. It doesn't look like of a surge of a very high type that it will cross the first wave. That's what I'm talking about.
could be, yes, sir. That is.
So coming back to that's interesting that in the first week you get more infections. So that means we need to come out with a awareness that first week after. Do you think it is the first week, or do you think this is you have acquired the infection in the vaccination center?
So this is,
No,
of course,
you said there are 2 times chances of getting the infection in the first 8 days.
at double this. The numbers were double, sir.
So that most likely they have acquired the infection in the vaccination center.
Could be when they're all congregating together, but again, that is speculating. But according to them, they said that it may be because of behavioral change.
No, behavior change is okay, but I'm talking about in the center where I had gone, it closed, windows were closed, and they were at least in that room, but it's a 3 feet distance, not a 6 feet distance. And in the waiting room, again, there is a 3 feet distance, not a 6 feet distance. So I expect that even if one person with asymptomatic goes there, he can transmit the infection.
Yes, sir. That could be one possibility.
Because if it is a merry-go-round, that type of a feeling, that will come on the second or third week, not on the first week. By second or third week, you say, after 2 weeks, you will say, I'm immune, let me take out the mask. But not in the first week. So I feel that finding will be more to be interpreted as a vaccine center-induced infections, if it is occurring in the first 8 days. That's my way of looking at it. And then reinfection, post-vaccine, co-vaccine, deletion. What are these antibodies, type 1, type 2, type 3 antibodies, monoclonal? What are these 3 types? Are they related to open and closed?
Which antibodies, sir?
Normally, they say monoclonal antibodies are neutralizing antibodies are of different types.
So neutralizing is IgG type, and in
subtype
IgG there are 4: A, B, C, and D, and or 1, 2, 3, 4. IgG1, IgG2, IgG3, IgG4, and I think these are the isotypes of IgG.
What does it mean? Do they relate to opening and closing of the RBD?
No, these will be, they have their own affinity. They just in there when you do electrophoresis, then they have slightly different change of position. So they would say this IgG will have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now, interpreting my case, what can be the reason of not developing antibodies at all after the first injection?
I think we should wait for 2 weeks and then check whether after 2 weeks you have.
In a second injection, I did get muscle pain for a day, and I did get a sudden rise in blood pressure. So there was reactogenicity. So I do expect some antibodies to come in the second.
So but because I have, we've got colleagues here who have got into thousands, and others also have responded well. But there are many of us who did not have any response. Though I do notice that people are not that See, we did not want to push it too much, but because no authority is saying that you should check. But I thought before deciding to postpone my vaccination, I must check what is the status. And after 28 days, when I checked my own antibodies, I found I have only 5. So then I went and got my second dose done. And that was on Tuesday. Now, after 14 days, I will get my antibodies tested.
No, 5 means normal is 15.
Should be at least 15 arbitrary unit per ml.
Hmm.
And it was only 5. So it was negative. And I was surprised myself because from the literature, it appeared I should have been in thousands. So I was actually hoping that I'm doing well. But I was surprised that it was
But
only
you did
5.
your S1, S2 diasonic.
Yes, sir, using diazorin.
Diasonic. So if all those people who are watching this program and if they have to refer their cases to Pathfind, what do they write?
They should write anti-spike antibodies.
That's all? Or they
That
write on S1, S2 diasonic
no, that
anti-spike?
anti-spike will be on. So because there are 2 antigens which people have used. One is nucleocapsid protein, and the other is spike protein.
No, in spike, all of them are doing the same pattern.
They're doing all persons who are doing spike will be doing this RBD portion. And I think now they're going to introduce neutralizing antibodies also in chemiluminescence.
Hmm.
So
No, at this moment, because that is available, but that is a qualitative. Dr. Lal is doing it qualitative, that present on or absent. So I'm talking about when you talk about S antibodies in the market, all the companies are doing similar type of a test.
they would use similar kind of chemiluminescence. I was told that another company is doing S/CO. That means what is the what is the uh, what is the amount of positive versus the negative control as a relative.
So they're giving you a ratio, something like
They
that.
are giving a ratio. Though WHO has
It's like INR test. You have a control.
WHO has now has standardized the. They've given an arbitrarily 250 unit. So they've taken a plasma. They have made that as the standard control, and they have given that as 250 international unit per ampoule, and that they will make available so that all these companies can standardize their units to international units per ml. So that has been done. Standardization has been done so that the vaccine, then potency of vaccine, both whether neutralizing or whether binding, can be then determined. The same unit would be used both for binding as well as for neutralizing.
So that's what Dr. Ashok Ratan has spoken about. All of you who are watching this program, if you have not been vaccinated, go for it. But when you're going for a vaccination, don't cheat. Cheating means if you are not a comorbid, don't take a comorbid certificate to get a vaccine. Because if an insurance company comes to know that you have not disclosed your comorbidity in the insurance form when you took the insurance, and now for the getting a vaccine, you are showing a comorbid, you may be in trouble. So therefore, be honest, because now in insurance, you say, मुझे को बीमारी छिपानी है. And to get a vaccine, you want to show कि मेरे को ये भी लिख दो, ये भी लिख दो, ये भी लिख दो, so that I become a comorbid. So all of you, if you are 45 plus, genuine comorbid, go for vaccine. If you are 60 plus, go for vaccine. All your parents and grandparents, give them a gift. So all your parents and grandparents, this is the time to give them a gift of a vaccine. They are 60 plus. So make sure you provide a gift of life to people who are 60 plus. Get their antibodies, S1, S2 antibodies done after 3 weeks of the first dose. If they are negative, make sure you do not delay the second dose. Otherwise, 2 weeks after the second dose, you can go opt for the same antibodies, or you can opt for a neutralizing antibodies which are present in the market. As on today, God has given you 2 years. Read about new mutations from 1 year, take it out in the other. Let that mutation not stuck to your mind and wake you a sleepless night in the night, because these mutations will keep on occurring. It's like an iPhone. The day you buy an iPhone, next week you will come back to say naya model aa gaya. It's like a computer. It's like a TV model. It's like a car. The models keeps on changing. Every 2 months, a new model will come. So if you, whichever vaccine you take, the mutation will come in that particular vaccine. Doesn't matter, because even a non-mutated virus vaccine will take care of severity, seriousness of a mutated virus. So जैसे हम लोग कंप्यूटर में काम करते हैं, कोई भी कंप्यूटर ले लो, पुराना ले लो, नए मॉडल का ले लो, पुराने मॉडल का ले लो, बेसिक काम तो कंप्यूटर करता है, कुछ एडवांस फीचर्स आपको नहीं मिलेंगे, तो आपकी जान तो वो बचाएगा, कुछ एडवांस चीजें वो आपको जरूर बचा सकता है. That's all for today. Sorry. That's all for today. Let me thank Professor Ashok Ratan to be here, and we will be back. We'll keep on coming and talking to each other on various seminars. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Live बंद करो.